Hey guys, Hamsterwheel here with a new video, and today I'll be talking a bit more about Vanillagaming. You see, about 2 months ago I made a review of Vanillagaming, and while I did touch the raiding content there, I admittedly only scratched the surface. Mainly because many of the raiding guilds there were on a holiday break, so to say, so there wasn't a whole lot of raiding going on. In other words, I kinda chose the wrong period to write a review about that server. Some people from the raiding guilds there reached out to me in the comment section, and they got me intrigued enough to head back to Vanillagaming and try out a few more raids. Matter of fact, I got so interested that I leveled the Warlock to level 60 on the Alliance side, scraped together some pre-raid best slot items through dungeon runs and with the help of some people from my guild, and here I am 2 months later with a Warlock that's got some pretty nice epics, including the Casting Dagger from Grobulus, the Reputation Ring from Brood of Nosdormu, and a bunch of other goodies. And even after these 2 months, I'm happy to say that I still try to raid with my buddies over Asterisk Accessum. I mean, I can't always find the time to raid, so becoming a full-fledged member there is probably not going to happen. But I'm more than happy to tag along with raids such as Blackwing Lair, AQ40 and Naxxramas. So, now that we got the little introduction out of the way, it's time to properly dive into raid content on Vanillagaming. Now before I move on, it's evident I put a bit more time into leveling characters here. Hell, I even now have a level 60 balanced druid on the Alliance side. And what I said about the leveling content still stands. It's a bit of a mess, and I've definitely seen better. But now that I properly explored the raiding content here, I must say that my opinion on Vanillagaming has changed a bit. Yes, the leveling content kinda left a bad taste in my mouth, but the server really redeems itself once you get into raids. I've already talked about the entry level raids like Molten Core and Urup, so I'm not gonna talk about that too much. I still have the same opinion about those, which is that they are scripted rather well, and overall I consider it to be an enjoyable experience. But I'm not really here to talk about those, I'm here to talk about the big 3 raids here. Blackwing Lair, AQ40, and of course Naxxramas. So let's do a rundown of each raid, starting with Blackwing Lair. The first boss of that raid is Razorgore, and anyone who remembers my Primal WoW video knows that I kinda ragged on them for not having the ads working. And anyone who remembers my Phoenix Warsong review probably remembers me pointing out that when the player controlling the fire orb gets hit by a fireball from one of the mobs, he gets disconnected. Here on Vanillagaming, it's working. Wonderful. There's nothing I could find that caused any problems, as well as Veilstress, which had every mechanic working as intended. Even the ads in between Veilstress and Bloodlord Lashlayer had their abilities working properly, though there is a little thing worth noting, and that is that the respawn times of the mobs in the suppression room are a little off, and that the traps don't knock you back like they're supposed to. Still though, aside from that, Blackwing Lair looks very promising so far. Moving on to Broodlord Lashlayer, you know, that ever so interesting fight where if you can't drop threat, you're pretty much wanding all the time as a caster. And I was kinda glad to see that I did have to do that, because that means the threat mechanic of this boss is working correctly, like all the other stuff. Let me get to the 3 dragons, which I like to call loot pinatas because they are admittedly kinda easy to kill. Once again, nothing worth mentioning here, they all work fine, and I was feeling better and better about Blackwing Lair here on Vanillagaming. So after those 3 dragons bit the dust, it's time to do Chromaggus, and again I'm impressed with the quality of this boss fight. All the debuffs are in order, he cycles the weaknesses properly, and line of sighting Chromaggus is still the way to go ever since 2005. Anyway, after that boss we arrive at the very last encounter of Blackwing Lair, Nefarian. So on phase 1 you focus down the Draconic ads, while Nefarious kinda harasses people with AoE Fears and Shadow Waltz. And once again it's working like a charm. Then Nefarian lands, and there is something off here, which is that you can line of sight his Shadow Flame, and yeah, that's not the way it should work. Like in retail, he does the AoE Fears, applies the reduced healing buff, does the class calls, and spawns the ads when he's at 30% HP. Then we killed him, and some interesting loot dropped, including the Caster Mace, but unfortunately not the tier. Ah well, I was glad enough to be able to join Chaos's Blackwing Lair pug, and I had a great time. So, looking back at Blackwing Lair, I have to say that this instance is working pretty darn good. There were no noticeable bugs, missing mechanics or anything like that apart from the Shadow Flame and Nefarium. It was a solid experience, and like I said, I really enjoyed my time raiding there. Well then, that's at least one of the 3 major raids working great. Let's move on to Ahn'Qiraj. Right, Ahn'Qiraj, a raid that I never managed to clear in vanilla retail with my old guild, so running through that entire raid was a special kind of treat for someone like me. So, first up we're starting with some trash mobs who have their abilities working up to snuff, including the spell Reflection to certain schools of magic and having to drain the Obsidian Destroyers or else they do AoE damage. Then we arrive at our first boss, the Prophet Scarab. This boss's main mechanic is that he splits into 3 at certain health percentages, and just like I've seen in Warsong and Primal WoW, this fight is working like a charm. Then we move inside, pick up some quests, and we're on to do more bosses in a queue. Once again, I have to say that I could find almost nothing wrong with this raid. There is a visual bug on Frankris where if you move too much as a tank, the boss could get out of line of sight from the melee DPS, and the adds enrage after 10 seconds, which should be 20. Svartura was spinning around playing tag with clothy DPS that died faster than MC Hammer's career. Huron's rage and poison mechanics work like a charm, and since I'm a casual scrub with no nature resistance gear, I of course died. The trash up to Twin Emps worked like it should, with either Meteors or the Plague, and then we get to the Twin Emperors. I'm taking a short pause here, cause I'd like to say that this is as far as I came way back in retail with my old guild. Sure, we attempted Twin Emps, but never got them down, just like Uro and Cthulhu. This means that it's kinda hard remembering what exactly the deal was with this fight. But I did check all the fights I haven't done on retail before, with other people playing on VG, to see if anything wasn't Bliss-like. So the Twin Emps fight went great, with their teleport, blizzard, and controlling the bugs working like it should. However, there was one thing regarding the teleport that was off. The threat phasing duration is way longer than it should be, which can definitely cause some issues for DPS regarding threat. Other than that though, it's not too shabby. Uro was another good example of a properly scripted fight with that burrowing mechanic working, and then we arrive at the final boss, Cthulhu. I unfortunately died quite early on, but based on my experience and me asking other players about AQ40, I can say that even this fight is scripted quite nicely. All in all, AQ40 has left a good impression on me. The bosses were working great, and so did the trash mobs. Plus, the screenshot of me with my guild Certus Successum at the Corpse of Cthulhu is a nice little souvenir from that raid. So, that's 2 out of 3 raids that I have almost nothing but good things to say about. But, of course, this wouldn't be a full-fledged raiding review without reviewing the mother of all vanilla raids, Naxxramas. Oh yeah, we're going back to that place. And let me remind you that the last time I actually stepped foot into Naxxramas on a vanilla server was in retail, so that's about 11 years ago. Naturally, the first time stepping into that raid again was an amazing experience and brought back many memories, both good and bad. But I digress, let's do some bosses. So the first wing I'll talk about is the military quarter. There's one thing worth mentioning here, and that is that the pathfinding of the trash mobs in this wing is a little off, but it's nothing major and doesn't take away from the overall experience that much. Hell, I hardly even noticed it until a more experienced player here on Vanillagaming pointed it out. Anyway, I'm happy to say that the first boss in this quarter is working just fine, and in terms of quality it reminded me a bit of Primal WoW. In a good way, that is. Moving on to Gothic the Harvester, there is another thing worth noting. You see, in this fight there is a living and an undead side. The casters stay at the living side, while the melee stays at the undead side. Now here on Vanillagaming, it is possible for the melee to get out of combat before the living side gets overrun and wipes by standing against the wall. This is probably not the way it should work, but other than that there's nothing else worth noting regarding this fight. And considering how that's the only iffy thing here, I'd say that this fight is still working pretty darn well. And then we move on to the 4 Horsemen. I unfortunately wasn't able to do this fight as my gear just isn't up to snuff yet, which was another reason why I decided to check these fights with other players on the server. Turns out that there is one thing that is off here, which is the Void Zones mechanic from Lady Blamo. Normally you'd see black spots on the ground and you have to run out of those, but sometimes they appear on the ground but are invisible. The GMs are aware of this issue, and even they and people from retail can't figure out what exactly is causing this bug. Either way, it's not exactly Blizz-like and could wipe the raid, so that is a little annoying. The rest of the mechanics work though, so it's not all bad. So, what about the other 3 quarters? Well, I'll talk about them briefly, as there's not really much to report here. I admit that the military quarter is still a tad bit wonky, but the other wings are honestly working great. I once again noticed that both the trash mobs and the boss themselves are scripted nicely. I mean, there is a weird spot at Hagen, where it looks like you're in the right spot, but you still get hit while doing the dance, and the web spinners in the Arachne quarter do not pull people towards them like they should, but that's really it. There's honestly nothing else I could find that was bugged or missing in these quarters regarding mechanics, abilities, and whatnot. And then we arrive at the last part of Naxxramas, the Frostworm Lair. Saffron works like a charm, apart from a very occasional visual bug, which could occur by a mage blinking, but that's pretty much it. And the last boss, Kel'Thuzad, Well, the only thing wrong with him is that interrupting his frostbolts and frostbolt volleys could kinda set off the timers for all the other abilities he does. But again, there's nothing else wrong with that encounter. So looking back at Nax, there are a few wonky things here and there, but to be fair, they're only minor things with the exception of the void zones at 4 Horsemen, as that could make or break a boss attempt. But if I look at the overall state of Naxxramas here on Vanillagaming, I have to say that I'm once again impressed with the quality of this raid. To tell you the truth, I'm quite shocked at how good the raid content is working here and how close to Blizz-like it is. Like I said before in this video and in my review, the road to level 60 was loaded with a fair share of bugs and didn't exactly get me very excited for raiding because I thought that trend of buggy content would continue throughout the raids. But I'm very glad to say that I was completely wrong about that, and Vanillagaming definitely has done their job on getting the raid content here up to snuff. Sure, it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty impressive to say the least, and it's going to be even more impressive in the near future. How so? Well, they are currently working on implementing the Elysium core into their server, which definitely has the potential of them being able to iron out the few remaining things in their raiding content, and it also has the potential of making the leveling content a much more enjoyable experience. They haven't yet settled on a fixed release date, so we're just gonna have to wait and see. So, all in all, I'm glad I decided to hang around a bit more on Vanillagaming after I did my review. And it wouldn't have happened if some of the more experienced players on Vanillagaming didn't reach out to me. Those people are Honey Cocaine from Chaos, Undercraft from both Horde and Alliance, and the boys over at Certus Excessum, who welcomed me with open arms and allowed me to join their raids. Also, a special shout out to Holyjin and Wallfudge for filling me in on things I haven't spotted myself or that I just didn't know. So, a big thanks to all of you for getting me into Vanillagaming. I had a rough start on the server, but the raiding content and the admittedly nice community here definitely made it worth to stay. And with that out of the way, I'd also like to give you a big thanks for watching this video. I'll be back very soon with more content, but until then, I'm Hamsterwheel and have a good one.